Ladies and gentlemen, we all have a crowning achievement or two in our lives, and if you haven't managed to reach one of those yet, don't worry. You will. Life is long. I don't know how many of you needed to hear that, but in chess, you probably remember that first moment of your life you got a brilliant move, right? You ran the game analysis after a game you played, and boom, there it was, the double blue exclam. You remember, you probably picked up your phone, called your family. Your family told you to get a job. You called your friends, I got a brilliant move. Your friends are like, bro, leave me alone. Get on the game already. Stop playing that goofy chess you play. But what if you played a chess game that had a couple of brilliant moves? Well, someone sent me, a subscriber sent me, shout out to Lucas, sent me a game where they got 5 brilliant moves. That's crazy. I've never seen that. I've maybe gotten 2 or 3 in one game before. I've gotten 5 over a period of games, but I have never in my life had 5 brilliant moves in one game. And this is a very high-level game. Both of these players, one from Ukraine, one from the Netherlands, they get honorary Grandmaster titles. We're not even going to have the eval bar on for this because I just want to give you the game just without that distraction. I know some of you like it, but we're gonna go through the game, and I'm gonna uncork those brilliant moves for you. So c4 played by white, the English opening, but very quickly goes back to d4. c4 is very unique. You can play the English to avoid various Nimso-Indian setups like this, but if somebody with black is going to play the modern, there is nothing you can do to prevent black from playing g6, bishop g7, which is one of the reasons it's such a nice universal opening, because you can play it really against anything. And if you don't mind it against e4 as well, like for example, d4, g6, e4, if you don't mind it, then the modern is perfect for you. In this game, white plays knight f3. Move order is important at this level. This is already a very high level. Knight c3 here, for example, allows black to play the move c5 and potentially send the game into what's known as a beef eater structure. And this is one of the most complicated systems in all of chess. I mean, computer always gives advantage here for white. It doesn't really believe in the obscure pawn structure. Yeah, knight f3 doesn't allow that because after c5, d5, there's no knight that can be captured, and white can just proceed like natural. Although if black can play f5 and try to go for a beef eater, white can just sort of delay the move knight c3 entirely. So already we kind of have the makings of some interesting stuff here. Now, white here plays a move that's not theory, which is fine, h3, but it can't really be punished. That's the thing about the move h3, it can't really be punished. Now, Stockfish wants black to play f5 and go for a Dutch defense because it thinks that the move h3 is actually kind of dumb. It thinks that that is black's best option after the move h3. But black proceeds with knight d7, and just a later moment will probably play e5 or c5. So black is playing in the style of King's Indian. The move h3, by the way, prevents the move bishop g4, which can be slightly annoying to take. Knight c6, play for a quick e5, which is typical King's Indian stuff. Knight c3, knight f6. Of course, at this point, it's already, you can begin e5 or c5. The King's Indian revolves around one of these structures. You either go for a Benoni-style structure, or, it's never too late to go for a beef eater, or you go for e5 and kind of a locked King's Indian. Now we have e4, castles, and bishop to g5. This is one of the variations. The traditional mainline King's Indian, which looks something like this, I don't even know what the main line here would be, but in general, bishop g5, I forgot the name. Some of you might remember. It's probably named after some player from the Soviet Union. In this case, there's a slightly different move order, but the ideas are sort of similar. The thing about moving the bishop out to g5 is, what are you going to do when it's attacked? Like, are you going to go to h4? Are you going to go back to e3? The bishop belongs on e3. It belongs on e3 because the knight cannot attack it on g4, because that's why you played h3. Like, if you're going to play h3 in a King's Indian, you really should move your bishop here, because it avoids all pawns, and it is nicely cradled next to the queen, and the knight cannot get it, right? So the bishop should go to e3. The bishop really should not go to h4 because it's totally surrendering this diagonal, and it's not doing a substantial job over here. Like, at any moment, black might even play g5, and again, if you get a structure like this bishop's just out of the game. Like, it's not participating anymore at all, which is why it should be here and escorting the queenside advancement, which is what you're supposed to do in the King's Indian style positions. But this is an intermediate level King's Indian. We're not talking GM level King's Indian defense, and so black plays the move b6. You really shouldn't play a two fianchetto King's Indian. Like, if you're going to play the King's Indian setup, you've got to play for e5 or c5. b6 is too slow, and an experienced player here with white, although that's not very experienced, will play for a very quick e5. And now black does not have any sort of stability. Like, you know, black can take and maybe move the knight back to h7. Here comes knight d5, queen e2, maybe long castle, and black is just under a lot of pressure here. The two fianchetto stuff in the King's Indian, you really don't see at the top level. But intermediate players don't really know when to jump forward. That's kind of the thing. They're worried about getting Adesanya, you know, like Robert Whittaker in the first fight. They're worried that if they jump forward, they don't know, maybe they're not ready, right? So white just develops a piece, and now black also develops a piece, and yeah, white should be castling here, or trying to, you know, come up with some sort of attacking plan forward. Like if you're gonna play g4, maybe you play queen d2 and long castle. Another reason why the bishop should be on e3, by the way, if the queen was on d2, you would actually have a target, which would be the h6 pawn. This bishop is out of the game. And yes, I am focusing on this type of stuff, like misplacing a piece in an opening, because at this level, that's what we're talking about. It's move 10. I mean, this is a very high-level game of chess. No one's done anything absurd yet. I try to adjust my level of commentary and joking about, like, the player's moves depending on what's going on. Now, queen c2 is not a good move. It's not a mistake, but you're overprotecting this pawn, but really the queen has no role in the game. The queen should not be this passive. It doesn't need that much protection. The king needs protection, and white decides to castle queenside. Now, black here can, again, go for e5 or c5. Black, in turn, plays the move c5, and in general, that move should be met with advancement. Okay, now you don't have to always advance, but notice how now black has entombed themselves completely, right? Like this bishop is not participating, and generally what you do after c5, e5 is you play at c5, d5, you play e6. So for example, all the way back here, I know we're jumping around a lot, but all the way back here, you know, black might go for a quick e6, not right away, because this, but typical stuff is to get a Benoni-style structure. All right, when c5, d5 occurs. Now, in the game after this, black cannot achieve e6 successfully, and instead is trying to go this way with the move knight e8. Knight e8 gets the knight out of the way, planning to transfer to the c7 square, and then a6, b5, and that's the plan. Now, white here should have taken a breath and been like, okay, I want a castle. Where is my opponent going to attack me, right? Like e6, they lose a queen. A6, b5, so I probably should not put my king there. I should put my king over here. Now, you can give white a few moves in a row, black a few moves in a row. It really doesn't matter if they succeed with b5 because there's nothing there. I mean, they're attacking an empty field. They want to go beat up some corn over there on the farm. You know, my king is over here. It's not going to happen. But instead of that, white plays long castles. And that's not very good foresight because black has made it very obvious that this is the plan, a6. Now, white must have thought, I'm not shook, I'm Greece-shook. Terrible joke. G4. So both sides are trying to get to each other, right? So b5 is being prepared. Now, black can already play b5. Just so you understand, I don't care that that pawn can be taken twice. The opening of the rook is sufficient. It's very common in the King's Indian Benoni structure to give away two queenside pawns for one pawn. This is known as the Benko Gambit style compensation. In the Benko Gambit, black loses two queenside pawns, but gets an avalanche on the A and B file. And normally white is not castled there, but because the king has made his vacation home on the queen side, well, now you just have a very easy plan of attack, kind of like when Iron Man gave away his address in the movie. And then his house got exploded, you know what I'm saying? Like, you kind of invited that upon yourself. It didn't look cool. It was a bad decision in hindsight, very rash. Knight c7. Now, at this point, white should be, you know, bringing the rooks over here. White should be preparing f4. And if you're going to move this knight anywhere, you should probably move it back toward everybody. White goes here, and the evaluation plummets. So there's a massive difference, apparently, between knight d2 and playing f4 and knight h2 and playing f4. To be honest with you, I can't really explain that difference. I guess the difference is that after knight d2 b5, which is exactly what was being planned, the reinforcement of the knight is better. So in Benoni style and Benko style games, the white knight likes to be on c4, and I think that's why knight d2 is so strongly preferred by the engine. But white goes here and tries to play f4 like this. Now, the way white did this was atrocious. So if white was going to play f4, they had to do it now. The thing is, black has a very instructive moment here. Do you take or do you attack the knight? If you said attack the knight, you actually don't understand what attacking chess is all about, because the knight now blockades you. Your pawns are completely stiff. They're never going anywhere, and white will just bludgeon you to death with 3 pawns. You actually have to take. It's very instructive. You need to take, and then knight b5, knight b6, you know, c4, knight b5. Like, this is actually how you create an attack in chess. So you have forward momentum. You cannot get your pawns blockaded. You paying attention? I know you're probably like 10 minutes into this. You're like, why hasn't he made a joke yet? Ooga booga, there's my joke. But, you know, we're trying to learn. But 5 brilliant games and 5 brilliant moves in one game. So white does this in the worst way possible. White allows both pawns to be there and then plays f4. You want to know something insane? After the move c takes b5, a b5, the evaluation is -5. -5 in an equal position. That's why I didn't want the eval bar, because you would have been really confused. You're like, what? Apparently, the laser beam here is so strong. Like, the attack is unstoppable. White has no way. That is why the knight had to be on d2 and reinforce. You do not want to open the floodgates for your opponent. f4. Now, black here could have played c4 or b4 already, but plays knight b6, which is not a bad move. a3, and now that's called a hook, so the move b4 becomes 10 times stronger, because not only do you hit the knight, you also hit the pawn. And after this, well, rook a1 is on the way, but cb4 is very potent. Now the c file is open, and the a file, this king is just is a goner, absolute goner. White has no time to attack anything, and the brilliant moves are about to begin, ladies and gentlemen. The first brilliant move of the game. Now, you see queen and king on the same line, you're thinking rook c8. Absolutely, I wouldn't blame you if you played that move, but by far more explosive. Knight sacrifice on d5. More forceful. Knight e3 on the way. This is on the way. That's the first brilliant move. If you take this, there is rook c8 incoming, and I mean, it's gonna get really ugly. So the queen darts to f2, avoiding the pin and defending the pawn. Now, the knight is hanging, so you have to move it. You can give a check, of course, but then the king is gonna run. Brilliant move number 2. Leaving the... You can pause at any point, by the way, and try to find them. Leaving the knight hanging on d5 and playing rook a2. 2 brilliant moves. The knight is now hanging once again, but the threat is irresistible. Rook takes b2, but even worse, you can check the king into running and then take, and now you're going to win the queen. And it's just going to be mate very soon. Rook a2 is an incredible move and punctuates these 2 pieces coming together to launch a devastating attack. That is why you should have never castled queenside if you were playing white, right? Let's also just take a quick moment and, like, pause. Look at all these pieces just scattered. No coordination whatsoever, right? Rook d2 defending. Now, brilliant move number 3, okay? The knight is still hanging. You can give a check. All right, what do you do now that b2 is defended? Oh, very simple. You play the top engine move again. But what is that? Well, black has realized that this knight is just an absolute goner. There's no point in going backwards. You go backwards, you might even hang your knight and lose the game, right? Actually, it's still better for black, believe it or not. Knight a4. Foot on the gas for the whole time. You're on an empty racetrack. Go as fast as you can. All right? Knight is still hanging. 3 brilliant moves. And the idea is, in this position, you have knight takes b2. You would think bishop takes b2 is reasonable, but then the king is going to run. So you play knight takes b2 to avoid letting the king escape, and you're threatening this brutal check. That is savage. You would be forking the king and queen, and if they take, you win the queen. Insane. Knight takes b2. All right? White plays bishop to e4. That's a good move. That defends the pawn on d5, and it gets the knight away from capturing here. Now, if we just pause here, white is still up a point of material. See, this is why I wanted to show you the game with no eval bar. Because you see the eval bar, you know what the eval is. But you don't know who's, like, winning just yet. I mean, you could maybe guess, but... Brilliant move number 4, right? We've moved the bishop out of the way. We've defended the center. You're probably looking at check. You're looking at getting the queen in, and etc., etc. Brilliant move number 4 is one of the most savage moves I've ever seen in my life. Bishop takes d5. Oh, my goodness. What? This is the point. If here, this works again. This works again, and you're winning the queen. But it's even more savage. You have queen c7 first. First, you have to force the rook over here, and then you do this. And there's a major difference in the fact that the knight cannot be taken. Then this is check, and if you had done it the other way, then after this, you would have lost a little bit too much material, and actually white is consolidating. So you have to give the check first, and then knight d3. Bishop takes d5. If rook takes d5, of course, there is just simple knight d3 stuff, and also queen c7, but bishop takes d5. 4 brilliant moves, and the craziest thing, this is a threat. There is a threat. The threat is to take the bishop for free. 4 brilliant moves in one game. White plays the move queen f3, defending against bishop takes e4, getting the queen out of any potential danger with knight to d3, and now black delivers the kiss of death. Black delivers the kiss of death with brilliant move number 5. And this one is, this one is spectacular. I mean, you know, you think take, like move the queen. Yeah, something simple, right? Yeah, so in this position, black plays the move b3. The engine does not even begin to realize how good this move is. Now, if I may say, this might have been an accidental brilliancy. Maybe black did not even realize how good this move is. The point of this move is it prevents bishop takes d5. It prevents bishop takes d5 because c2 is covered. See, a move ago, if you played queen c7, white would have played rook c2. But b3 hangs the bishop 3 different ways. Not 3, but the queen is defending the bishop 2 different ways. And now queen c7 is no longer able to block mate. And if knight here, rook a1, oh no, rook a1, king b2, although there is still forced mate. You just take on c3, then you play rook a1. And that's what happens. Bishop takes d5, queen c7 and block. And now black ends the game because the king has been unable to escape at all. The king is just stuck on c1, all right? You made your bed, now sleep in it, and you might be wondering, well, why is white not sacrificing? It's not going to do any good. It's not going to do you any good to sacrifice on b2 because I'm going to take, and I will just mate you in a couple of moves. All right? So bishop takes d5, check here, and now just simple. There's a little bit of a blockade now, rook c8. And again, if queen takes b3, check, and down to h1 we go. And that is exactly what happened in this game. White grabbed the pawn, queen c6, rook c2 block, and at the end of everything, the queen galloped to the opposite side of the board and took the only piece in this game that did not move. White moved all their pieces. Well, some got captured, but everything in white's position up in this position has moved, except that rook. And white resigned, because now you are down 4 points of material, but it's even worse than that. All right, check is here. You're going to win this. With check, everything is going to collapse. You know, white would have probably hung a few more pieces with check and then just lost the game. Probably the rook would have fallen. It's bad. It's real bad. 5 brilliant moves in one game. Now, just to recap a few things, like to get 5 brilliant moves, your opponent needs to do some really disastrous stuff, right? So in this game, white made a very bad decision. You almost never go long in King's Indian. There are some very specific positions you might, but in general, you got to castle short because black, especially after c5, is going to try to play a6, b5. Now, if black had played, for example, e5, d5, then, you know, if you want to, you can castle queenside, but I got to tell you, castling queenside is still a little bit suspect, okay? And black actually is still almost always better because this advancement is coming, and these pawn sacrifices are all over the place and to open up the position. So white allowed themselves to get really brutally attacked, move their pieces to certain obscure corners of the board where they did not participate in the battle in the middle, all right, in the middle area, and black just played beautiful chess. I mean, coordinating their pieces, targeting the hook, sacrificing material, leaving the knight to hang, targeting a weak spot in the position, sacrificing another piece of material, and ending the game with b3. I mean, good lord. So the king is not able to block himself with the rook. Just honestly, an amazing game. I sometimes show bogus games where people do absurd things, but today I wanted to show a beautiful game. And this is one of the reasons I love the King's Indian style play, because the bishop, the rook, just the avalanche of pressure that black can uncork in a snap of their fingers is just amazing. So 5 brilliant moves. Congrats. Even I've never done that. I'll see you in the next video. Get out of here.